Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of SEOs Getting Coffee. And today we have a very special, but a very, very, very special guest, Arnout, with us. Do you have your cuppas ready? I have my
Do actually.
cuppa. It's a
I haven't got
Christmassy one.
much. I haven't got much left, Emina.
Mm.
And on out. Yeah, I'm sorry, but
My one is a
I'll
Christmas
finish my
one.
last sips.
Yeah, it's all right. We forgive you, Sean. So for anybody out there who has been living under a rock and does not who Arnout is, he is a freelance SEO, PPC, and analytics consultant who owns a very interesting story, online marketing, which is very difficult to pronounce, Arnout.
Yep, I know.
He's been speaking at Brighton SEO for ages now. I think the first one was 2007 or 5.
I don't know.
Around that time.
And
But
I
yeah, he's been in
haven't
the industry forever.
I haven't spoken at Brighton SEO, but I've been to a lot of them.
Oh, but you've spoken on a lot of different other places, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
But I quite
career.
enjoy Brighton as just hanging out with industry folks.
Oh yeah, we are doing some hanging out in October. I'm telling you now. Today we're going to be talking about what everybody's talking about, which is basically the future of SEO. And I think Arnout is a brilliant person to talk to about this. You've been in the industry for ages, so let's go to the past so that we can go to the future. Tell us a little bit about the past of search.
Wow, back in the days, the fun days, right? When you start and there were no tools, you had Yahoo Open Site Explorer, you had Xeno Link Sleuth, there was no Screaming Frog, there was no Sitebolt, no whatever, right? And this was the time when they weren't obscuring keywords, right? And search terms, so you could see everything. You could see visitors coming to your site. You could see exactly what they've searched for, the whole shebang. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But I guess, as with all things that are open and can and will be abused, and that's what a lot of the people in the industry have been doing, figuring out, hey, if I just point a lot of links to it, or if I just change the page title or whatever, it works. And then basically it started, right? We've had like the Penguin updates, we've had loads more, and it just evaluated. And the evolution was interesting. In the beginning, I just you figure out how it works, and it used to be really simple, relatively. It was just get a few links, change a few page titles, change a few headings, and rank, right? And at that time, I just got a bit fed up with it. So in 2015, I've been doing freelance for 5 years, I started doing more of the CRO things and more analytics, because in the end, I quickly noticed it's not about getting people to your website. It's about getting them to achieve the goal they're after. And if it's the right people with the right intent, it aligns with your goal as a business as well. So I felt like CRO and SEO, they should serve the same purpose, right? And I think that's when I got really interested in learning about psychology, about cognitive load in the brain, and those kind of things. And it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that. And
it set you up, didn't it? Like
it also basically, I took all of my clients onto that. I said, we're not going to do SEO. We're just going to focus. We've got traffic. We've got people. Let's get them to do what we want them to do. In this case, book an apartment or fill in a lead form or whatever it may be, right? And I only got back into SEO about, I think, in 2017, 18, when I spoke with Jarno van Driel, and he explained to me the semantic web, right, and structured data and those kind of things, and that just blew my mind, right? This is next level stuff. This is what it should have been. This is interesting. Let's go. And I really got interested. It piqued my interest again, right? And I think it has to do with the fact that I have later been diagnosed with ADHD. It's an interest-based nervous system, so it piqued my interest. Got back into it, and but I think having done 2 or 3 years more focused on CRO and analytics, it really broadened my perspective on what I think any SEO or any digital marketer should be doing, right? Because it's that core skill you need. I often tell people it's not about clicks or conversion rates. It's actual people on the other end, right? And it's our job to take away as many barriers and answer their question in their quest to getting information or getting a job done, right?
Yeah.
And I see so many people asking these questions like, what's a good conversion rate? Screw you, there is no good conversion rate, right? It's about how can you get them to do that with the least amount of frustration.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
the
also
friction,
I also keep telling people, right, one of my biggest drivers is I want to remove friction. I just hate friction. And the amount of times we're interacting on the web or on an app or wherever, and we're frustrated because we can't do what we want it to do, right? We can't copy a password, or we can't do this, or we click on something, it doesn't load, or whatever, right? And it's everywhere. And it's like, if people would just pay attention to that and remove that friction, their business would be a lot better than looking at, hey, why are we not ranking number 1 for this keyword?
Yeah, exactly. And it sets you up like all of that is really relevant today. I mean, you've opened my eyes to this. I always think about friction because I come from SaaS as well. And when you were talking about cognitive load and removing cognitive friction is actually what's happening today on the search side, because Google is doing the searching for us now. We don't have to do it. So it sets me up really well into so what's your opinion on Google removing the cognitive load? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What do you think?
I think the evolution of search has always been removing cognitive load. So if you look at the very first instance of Google, they were the first ones to not do a word count on a page and then rank websites based on how often does the word exist on that HTML page, right? What they would do is they would become the librarian, right? So you'd go into a library, go to the librarian and says, I'm looking for this information. Now, what they did is they used links as a kind of a recommendation engine, right? So if certain articles would be referenced more, then it would mean that's more relevant. And they were the first one. With that, they took away a tremendous amount of cognitive load for a person to find the information they're looking for, right? And if nobody would have gained the system by getting backlinks, and it would have just organically grown, like we would have a lovely index, right? And we wouldn't need all these kind of things, right? And I think a lot of it has been around removing that friction. Even if you think about it, those interstitials, they basically say you can't have these or certain other things. It's all about cognitive load. And even if you think about framing core web vitals, it's also cognitive load because it takes you longer to get the answer, right? And I think if you look at the evolution of search, first it were articles, but then we got the snippets and the PAAs and those kind of things, which basically were just removing cognitive load.
Yeah,
Because
it's the
instead of
Fraggles as well. Now it's like the
exactly,
Fraggles. So
because your answer is there, done, right?
Mhm.
And I think an evolution of that has been AI overviews, and I think sometimes they're over exaggerating with AIOs because it could easily just be a snippet, and they still do the whole AI overview, which I think is like you're adding again, right? But for other things, when they look at multiple sources and they summarize it, right? For instance, if a great way of having an AIO is a review for a certain product, and it would look at pros and cons on different sources, and like that removes so much friction. Instead of me going through every review, it's just right there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just a normal evolution of what we would like to see as users. And I think if you look at the younger generation, right, my kids, teenagers, they're about instant gratification. Don't make me think, right? Just get me the answer, right? And if they don't like the answer, they'll swipe it away. That's what they do on TikTok. That's what they do everywhere, right? So it's all about removing that. So that's the first part. And if you then look at AI mode, I think AI mode is just covering off the chat kind of interfaces of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and whatever there is more Copilot, because they need to cover that off. Because if people use those platforms, they go away from Google, right? And it's very hard to change that back to Google, right?
Yeah.
So
But do you not think because they obviously have Gemini and you can like chat to Gemini, but nobody does, which is, I mean, it's interesting. So the way that they brought it into search rather than integrating Gemini, you know, kind of allowing from the search a tab or whatever to talk to Gemini, they did AI mode. I wonder why they decided to make it like it's a different experience, isn't it? It really is. I looked at it a few times and you know it's gone. The SERPs are gone. There's no search bar. There's nothing.
And I agree. So what if because if you integrate it in search and people start using it, how are you going to monetize it? All those other platforms require a subscription. Yes, it's free, but if you do multiple searches a day, you need to pay. Right? And
how
if
can
you
you
would
do that?
integrate that into search, it would mean you can't really, like, how are you going to monetize it?
Yeah,
Because
I think that's
what?
That's one of the key things is that, you know, obviously is like working obviously with you know, SEO and SEOs being worried, of course, about the future and how things are, you know, how things are going. But on the paid side is that, you know, the reality is that obviously Google, Alphabet, you know, the main source of their revenue driver is obviously ads. Exactly. So there's absolutely no way that they're going to sacrifice ad space. If anything, they're going to put more into it. So, you know, this kind of like promoted results within AI overviews or promoted results within AI, you know, is just going to be something which I think that they will eventually, or they will double down on. It will be, you know, just a new kind of SERP, but it'll be AI based, but you'll be able to basically get placements in there that are promoted. And also when you
they have to do that with like the chats as well. I mean, there's no way that they're not going to commercial. You don't think? Because I think the future is ads in chat.
But I think maybe and maybe not. Like, let's see. I think they're playing the waiting game. They've basically got scenarios there. They don't need to be the first mover, right? So OpenAI can be the first mover, going, hey, we do shopping results now, and they're promoted, right? For instance. And if that takes off, then Google can just go, hey, we can do that as well. Right.
Yeah.
So, but I fully agree with you, Sean. At the moment, they want to squeeze as much revenue out of the almost like the technical links and
I think
those kinds of things.
The past year, I think it was Google's like worst year or whatever it was, and it's no surprise that they're sacrificing why would Google show anymore? Why would they show organic listings? For like, why would they send people to other people's websites when they can keep it on Google owned properties and they can put their ads in there and they can basically have more ad space. The more ad space they have, the more money that they can make. So on a bad year, they can, bring some more ad space in there and they could hopefully try and push those numbers up, right? But going back to all these options and all these like AI mode and all these things, I think that's the thing. You're seeing like a pathway of ideas and like that, like a sketchbook almost of like a live testing of things that are all it's all going to end up in the one place, which is like the Project Mariner type stuff that Google's doing, where essentially you're going to have an agent and but that agent's going to know everything about your personal search. So if you've got like a Google account, like most people do, or they will know a lot about you, about your search habits, about your purchase habits, the type of brands that you buy from, your interests, all of these things, all of this data and information that they've got. And they'll use that to give you unique recommendations based on your search habits and based on what they know about you.
Embeddings, so it's your personal embeddings.
Yeah, so it's like if Emina and I search exactly for this, we both search for running shoes, we would likely get completely different results in the future because it will be based on our interest and based on the types of brands. They might know that I like lightweight running shoes or whatever because I do more trail running or whatever. I don't do running, but I'm just making this up. But Emina might go jogging around the park. So these agents and things.
They will extrapolate that over a big group, right?
Yeah.
That's I think the real power. But I also at the same time I think there is a kind of I wouldn't say existential crisis, but there are some crises on the horizon, right? So if Google needs to let go of, say, Chrome, right, or Android, for that matter, a lot of these data points will disappear.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then the context of an agent will be a lot less relevant. And I think the biggest proof I've seen was like 2 years ago. I was doing some research together with John Alderson, and we were basically looking into the Chrome internals, right? So in Chrome, there was a tab called Journeys and Topics. This was in Chrome.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, Chrome would build that user's behavior and journeys. So what they would do is every website you visit, right, it would go, do you want to continue this journey? Right. So they were already mapping everything in Chrome, right? And if you think about it, so even if you weren't using Google, right, you were using Bing or you were using ChatGPT or whatever, they would still be able to see on what kind of journey you were on.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
It's just pretty bizarre if you think about it, right? That we give all of this away. But it also creates a massive competitive edge for a search engine like Google or a behavioral data company that you could say Google is, right? Because they go way deeper than just the SERP and what you put in. But if you think about it, it puts in your thoughts, but then also it can see your digital journey and possibly also your offline journey. Like wowzers.
Yeah, and it's
from a privacy perspective, this is completely and utterly like they know more than anyone.
And it's kind of like on my cynical side, this is one of the reasons why I think that they've made, attribution data and they've made things so much more private these days. Like in the past, like you were saying earlier, is like you'd have like a search term report in Google Ads or whatever, and it would give you everything. You don't have that much information anymore. And these days with like GA4 is that like there's loads of information that you just can't see anymore. And obviously, attribution has become more it's more become harder to kind of measure. There's all of these things that have changed, and with cookies and things like that. But actually, I think a part of it is that, well, actually Google, maybe on the cynical side of me, thinks that maybe there's also purpose, and it helps them if it's like it's more, we don't really know what information you've got on us anymore, because actually they've got loads and they don't want people to know how much that they have on you, to be able to kind of train their systems and give you, the amount of data that they must have must be.
It was interesting, right? When we moved the Next Web into a testing version of GA4, we were freaking surprised, because what happened was the cookie, even though we declined the cookie would still be dropped.
Yeah.
And we had no clue why, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't see the visitor. We couldn't, but we saw it being dropped. Now that's basically a anonymized but still tracked user. So this is why they go, hey, do you want enhanced conversions in GA4?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because
it's anonymized.
they know they're still tracking it.
Yeah.
They're just not showing it to us. Which,
exactly.
Which from my perspective, it's just like, wow. It's like, but they're not the only ones doing this, right? There's the big companies. There's the Facebook,
and people are trying to. The thing is, the browser element is so relevant. This is why, kind of, a lot of companies. I was reading a paper. I think it was one of the chatbots is now developing their own browser, and I'm not like surprised, because it's such a competitive advantage. But what happens? So one of the things that you touched upon and is around. So we have all of this user data. If they lose Chrome, they're going to lose a lot of that. What are your opinions on using synthetic queries? So a lot of these models and a lot of kind of things that are being trained are now moving into like synthetic queries. Do you think that they have enough data to be able to then synthetically model some of this going forward if they do lose Chrome?
For sure, right? However, I think trends and upcoming things, and like a lot of the things nobody has ever searched for, that will be searched for next year, right?
Yeah.
So yes, for a lot of things, the things, the searches won't change. But for instance, COVID, nobody could have predicted that, right? Nobody could have. And so you can have synthetic queries, but they're not going to handle this kind of volume, and they can't even predict it, right? So for sure. And it's the same with synthetic users in A/B testing and those kind of things. For sure, it can all be done. But I almost feel like, and I've said this in our clubhouse room probably a few times. I'm like, it's almost we go back to Madman times, right? Madman, the series, where attribution was all about how many eyeballs can you reach, right? And what kind of story. And it just feels like a few years ago, I've worked for a lot of companies that would say this needs to work last click, right? The biggest one that comes to mind is Booking.com. So Booking.com was basically, if last click you can make this work, you can have all my money. because it's basically creating a money printing machine, which is great, but they've never invested, and they are doing it now, but they've never invested in actually building a brand. They could have owned the whole space, right? So I've been working with companies where I've said, hey, you're spending probably north of $500,000 a month on PPC and social ads, but all driven to last click.
Last click, yeah.
Why don't we take 20% of that budget and just do nice things, building the brand, showing who we are, what we do, blah, 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 the thing behind it. Because in the end, that will lead to a more foundational thing around the brand, right? And I think because we could measure, we just wanted to measure, right?
Yeah.
And about 5 years ago, I did an inspirational talk about how to work with data. You can become data driven, data informed, or data inspired. And I think everybody went for data driven. That was the holy grail. But actually, they forgot to actually build the brand because they were spreadsheet managing a business.
Yeah.
Which is now, and now that's like, it's going to be impossible to do that. This is the other
not
thing.
only impossible, but the companies that have done this, they haven't built the foundation that's needed for LLMs. Because
the ones that haven't, the ones that haven't done it,
because they basically said, we are a place to do what you want to do. That's it. And they've never told the story outside. They've never like, why should you use us? Or they've never been mentioned anywhere because it's not about building a brand. It's about making money, right? And I think a lot of these companies will have difficult times ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that brings me to my question around, so obviously there are some skills that should have been part of SEO in the first place. I am complete believer in analytics and CRO being two of those. And I would say the same thing for paid. I mean, CRO for paid and analytics for paid. Again, I think you need to have those. Is there, and I know that there's a lot of people who are feeling a little bit pressured with everything that's happening in the industry. What advice would you give them other than, get into CRO, get into analytics? Is there anything else that people can do to make sure that they're actually, prepared for this future of search?
I think you should have always been thinking about what the business tries to achieve, right? You can't just go in, hey, we need rankings. You need to understand the business model and how it will align with potential customers, right? Because otherwise, in the end, it won't work. The other things is learn about I wouldn't say learn CRO because there's so much in there. There's statistics, there's like technical stuff, there's hypothesis, and but think about the human perspective, the psychology behind it, right? How does cognitive load work? Like why do people click? So there's a few books, right? Like Don't Make Me Think, Daniel Kahneman, or the Cialdini principles about persuasion, right? And I really like Creating Superfans. That's also a great book. But just reading those can get you to in a different mind shift, right? So that's my first advice. The second one is, and I've been thinking about it a lot for myself as well, right? I think there's in SEO, there's going to be two big areas of growth. One is in proper PR. Tell your story, get it out there, understand where it needs to go. Like, really do that. Do your own research, publish things, and like helpful things, right? Not something that's already out. Because in the age of LLMs, does like write another article about the 10 things to do in Paris. No, the 10 things to do as a deaf person in that is great because it's not out there anymore. So don't focus on keyword research. Focus on, hey, where are there gaps? Where is stuff that isn't there, right? So, and then work that into a PR strategy and syndicate it, get it everywhere. So that to me is a really big one. The other part of it is, I think analytics, even though we can measure less and less and less and less, I see so many companies not even tracking micro conversions, like, hey, somebody used this calculator, or hey, somebody filled in this form, whatever. Properly measure that, even though you can only properly measure it for, say, 60% of people. But that 60%, you need to feed into the algorithms where you're trying to reach these people. So,
exactly.
So either you're in analytics, that's a great area of growth because I've hardly ever seen proper analytics like setups. It's so
even with the big companies, even
Jesus.
like with the enterprise company, which is just shocking to me considering how much it's, because with analytics it's difficult. They want you to prove the ROI for analytics, like it's something that in itself, like what about the ROI that you're losing on PPC because you're not feeding the systems any real data?
But Emina, I've worked for a lot of big corporates, right? And the one thing I keep seeing is nobody owns it. And there was a quote when I was at a very large bank where somebody said, hey, Arnout, we were having coffee, and he said, do you know how you want to have a good career here? Just give a damn. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, nobody gives a damn, right? They come in, do their work, they leave, and that's it. There is nobody actually owning the stuff. If this was a big corporation, right? So just give a damn, and that really sets it apart, right? Because it can all be done, but it needs ownership. But ownerships also make you vulnerable because you might expose other people's flaws, which doesn't make you popular in a company like that, which might get you fired or moved somewhere
politics,
else. Right?
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things. But so to condense it a bit, it's you need to know about cognitive load and psychology of search and just psychology in itself, consumer psychology. Then the second part is learn a second potential path is PR, right? That big thing and telling the stories and doing all of that. And then the third part to me is a lot about analytics. And of course there's also a bit tech SEO, but only for like really difficult crawling issues and et cetera, because everything still needs to be indexable, right? And it still needs to be in those training data set and those crawlers. So, but those are the main things. And I think, yeah, that's it towards the future. But I think the easiest way where there will be the most work is analytics and setups on that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. And we've always had this problem with in the analytics space because the tech stack keeps on expanding. But everybody is always on about, my data doesn't match and things like that, which is like a completely wrong question in my mind to ask. So no, I agree, and I'm all for it.
And the other thing, like all those tools out there, right? Yes, they give you insights, but you get questions like, why does Ahrefs gives you this volume, and why does SEMrush give you this, and similar web this, and I'm like, you know what, guys, it's all synthetic data. Yes, they have data points. They have their own expert. It's nowhere near, right? I've seen them go, there's zero search volume, and then you go onto the website or in Search Console, and you see how much traffic it gets, and you go, okay, so use it as guidance and measure what you can measure, right? It's that simple.
Yeah. Not all good things can be measured, and not all that we measure are actually good things.
For sure. That's a great one. And I mean, I love data, but I hate that people say, well, prove it to me in data. And you go, well, some things you can't prove, right? An ROI of an article you published 5 years ago, it could well do really well now in an LLM. But how am I going to prove the ROI?
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Exactly. Right. Arnout, we spoke about a lot of things, which is what we expected and what I was looking for, and we went everywhere. Yeah. Now, the last thing that we do is we invite our guests to banish something into room 404. It should really be a room 10, 410.
410,
yeah. There's a few things already in there. We have Google Analytics 4 that is a regular. We have other things that are not digital marketing related, like chauvinism and sexism, which I think is a very good addition in there. What would you like to banish? What really kind of, it can be this week or in general in life, what would you like to put behind the door? Are you choosing or
no? So there's loads, but I think the one thing for me is clients that don't want to do the work but do want to get the rewards. Screw them, right? It's like, yeah, back in the days, people would be like that. You need to SEO this, get a few backlinks, and it doesn't work that way, right? You need to. So I often get these questions like, I want to rank for this, and I'm looking at the website. It's like, well,
you never will.
Well, maybe you will, but you'll never get the max out of it. There's more work here, right? And they are not willing to put in the work. And I see a lot of those. And I just, if they could be gone, the world would be a better place, because they're usually energy drainers if you take them on. So maybe I should say energy draining clients. They should be gone. I'd love that.
Nice. That's a really good addition. I think we can all agree, as all three of us have clients and we have seen it happen. I would also add energy draining agencies in there, because like seriously, I've had in my in-house years, I've had so many of them that were just, so both of them can go in together.
Well, they're a perfect match for each other.
Yeah, they are a good match. Perfect match for each other.
They could meet in the 410 room.
Exactly.
With GA4. All right. Well, thank you, Arnout, so much.
My pleasure.
For coming to the podcast. It's been a brilliant discussion. Where can people find you?
They can find me on X, although I'm not really. Mostly you can find me on LinkedIn. Just let me know that you've listened to the podcast, what you thought of it, and then I'm always happy to connect. But I get a lot of connection requests. You might also get quite a few from, say, India and Pakistan. I'm not necessarily declining those, but if I see outreach and links and
don't get in touch.
So just let me know you've listened to the podcast. So LinkedIn is probably the best place. X, you can go at Hellemans, or Blue Sky. I'm more there. It's hellemans.me. Happy to chat. And Emina, we need people, or if people want to chat about loads of these kind of things, then come to our clubhouse room, right? On Tuesday, late. What is that? 8:00 UK
7
time.
o'clock.
7:00 UK time. 8:00 Dutch time.
Yeah, it's part
it's
of the
wonderful.
SEO community. So if you're not part of the SEO community, you have to be part of the SEO community. It's a brilliant one.
Yeah.
And come and join us. We talk a lot about these things. So, and it's
For
always
sure.
very super interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming to us. And for all of our listeners, don't forget to subscribe, like, do all of the, the CTA side of things. You got to kind of put that in.
Just ask a question. That's always a good start.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask
That's a really good one. Comments. Love a bit of commenting. So please do. And see you next time.
Yeah, thanks,
Bye.
Arnout. See you later, everyone.